The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
Ready for your weekly tech fix? Want to know how technology sets us free? Well, get ready because here it comes. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, entrepreneur and technophile Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Here I am, the Golden Stallion of the tech world, here for another great episode of Sovryn Tech. Just me this time, but hey, it's my show. But if you want to see more than me and me, there's an event coming up I will be at. It's in New York City. This will be on Saturday, April 20th, 2013, and it's Anarchy in the NYC. I'm not a speaker there, but there's going to be some great speakers there. Jeff Berwick, Stefan Molyneux, Bob Murphy, some other people, and, some big names, and it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be a great time. Now I lived in New York for a while, and admittedly, I'm shocked that there's any kind of, one of the reasons I left New York is because there weren't any anarchists there. So I'm a little stunned by this, that this even exists. But, I think the event's probably it might even be sold out. I don't know. But maybe there's some little tickets laying around that if you still want to catch it, go for it. And if you want to say hi to me while I'm there, say hi. So Brian Sovryn will be there. Let's get right into the show. What we're going to talk about today for at least a couple sections is really the future of technology, like where technology is going within the next year. And there's a couple of products, both in a way coming from the same company, that may change things, may not change things. A popular example of a technology that looked really, really like revolutionary, but didn't go anywhere was like the Segway. Just overpriced and relatively purposeless. As fun and as well made as it was and is, it just doesn't. Meter maids can walk around. They don't have to be on a Segway to use it, even though I know in some cities they do use those. So the Segway is a very, very popular example that people give, and it's become kind of a catchphrase for when you want to describe a product that may not actually, that while really cool, and again, revolutionary, it actually has no real practical purpose. And so people who use that phrase, you will often hear me use the word Segway. And in fact, for maybe both of these technologies, or at least one of them, I would compare them to the Segway. And what we're going to talk about first for our main story is Google Glass. So what is Google Glass? Okay, you probably heard about it. Some people call it Google Glasses. That's kind of a misnomer. It's actually just Google Glass. And what it is, it's essentially a wearable computer. You put it on, it looks like a pair of glasses without the glass. That's probably why they don't call it Google Glasses. But you put it on, and it has a Retina display, and I don't mean a Retina display like Apple puts on there. I mean a virtual retinal display, as in it literally beams the image that the computer is projecting onto your eye, literally onto your retina. Okay, now maybe that technology's okay. I'm not a huge fan. Right off the bat, I'm not a huge fan of that whole principle. I think it would have been a little more interesting. There are models of Google Glass where they actually have sunglass lenses on it. I like those a little bit better, and I wouldn't have minded if the display showed up on the sunglasses. You know what I mean? So essentially, you're walking around with Terminator vision with these on, like the Terminator, except you're not seeing all red, and hopefully you're not targeting anybody. So anyway, this Google Glass, it's happening. It's out in the wild now. There's been pictures here and there. When I say out in the wild, that means that, working versions of it have been seen in public. And already in the United States, West Virginia is looking to ban Google Glass, for drivers. As in, if you're driving, you can't use Google Glass. And I think maybe one of the points where people like to say that Google Glass won't be like the Segway is because, now you can do all this stuff while you're driving. But is there a catch to that? Anyway, we'll read a quick article here from TechCrunch. And that is, West Virginia lawmaker seeks to ban drivers from wearing head-mounted displays like Google Glass, and it's by Matt Burns. I don't see a problem with this. In short, a West Virginia lawmaker wants to outlaw the wearing of head-mounted displays while driving in his state. The device would join other banned electronic communication devices like cell phones. The bill, while perhaps a bit laughable at first, is logical and smart. It makes a lot more sense than banning the use of Google Glass in dive bars. The story goes that CNET's early Google Glass hands-on prompted the proposed legislation. CNET's Chris Matisik reached out to the bill's sponsor, Gary G. Howell, a Republican in the West Virginia legislature, who thankfully is not an ignorant Luddite. He's just sensible. And this is in quotes, "I actually like the idea of the product, and I believe it is the future. But last legislature, we worked long and hard on a no texting and driving law. It is mostly the young that are the tech savvy that try new things. They are also our most vulnerable and underskilled drivers. We heard of many crashes caused by texting and driving, most involving our youngest drivers. I see the Google Glass as an extension. Texting while driving is dangerous, and while Google Glass is, less emasculating, it is still a distraction." Now, that emasculating thing, there was kind of a big deal over the fact that Sergey Brin, who is one of the co-founders of Google, he came out, when he was doing a PR campaign essentially for Google Glass, he said that smartphones were emasculating people. Now, emasculating, you can look up the definition. That has directly to do with men. And so people, women took offense to it, saying, it's like, what's this emasculation? What is that talking about? And men took offense to it too, because it's a very, very rough word to use, especially when you're talking about the entire human race. So that's why they kind of use the word less emasculating here. But anyway, cars are already overloaded with gadgets and screens. They have their own heads-up displays, countless dials, and worse yet, slow and unresponsive infotainment systems that seemingly control more of the vehicle with each new iteration. If you're driving, that's what you should be doing. Facebook can wait. The proposed legislation would lump head-mounted displays in with cell phones and other electronic devices currently banned from using while operating a motor vehicle. The first offense would result in a fine of $100. The second, third, or subsequent offenses would cost $200 or $300, respectively. Howell goes on to state that he's not sure if the proposal will become law, although he's sure other legislatures will file similar bills. But have no fear, Google apparently saw this coming. The company already has an answer. And of course, the answer they're referring to is that Google is developing self-driving cars. But that's, I get the point that they're trying to make there that, Google will have self-driving cars, so now you can use it while you're driving. But if you're in a self-driving car, you can use your smartphone. That's kind of a ridiculous answer. That's like creating a problem, like creating your own problem and then creating a solution to it to make more money or something. Not to say businesses don't do that, but anyway, a little strange. Now, obviously, at face value, this is ridiculous to think that you need to ban Google Glass, while people are driving, because obviously banning texting has worked out so well while one drives. Because what happened is there's more accidents now that texting's banned because people are like sneaking the cell phone under the dash so the police don't see it as they drive by, and they're driving even more dangerously because you're not going to stop humans from doing what they want to do. Laws don't do that. Okay. Education does that, not laws. And so with that in mind, this is absolutely ridiculous, to think that legislation is going to solve it. There was an article, out of VentureBeat where they talked about how in West Virginia, the roads are particularly dangerous, especially in the winter. I guess West Virginia is a pretty mountainous area. If you've never been there, it's just mountains everywhere. And so the idea of, maybe taking it easy while driving isn't such a bad one, but this is the point. This is what needs to be done. Just educate the people of West Virginia. Say, look, do you realize the roads you're driving on? Maybe you want to pay full attention to what's going on. Okay. Or you could get in some degree of trouble. Or maybe even, if it's that dangerous, then, maybe insurance companies would look into, hey, if you have Google Glass, maybe we'll put a $6 fee on your, on your premium or something, but legislation doesn't solve anything. Now, obviously, I feel I'm stating the obvious, especially to my very intelligent audience. But, I wanted to get it out there all the same. There's another interesting little tidbit about Google Glass that I want to talk about. We're going to talk all about Google Glass here for a bit. And one of this is another article from TechCrunch where they're talking about, the truth about Google Glass, they call it. And they show some viral video that went around about how crazy it's going to be, like, when you go on a date or something. And anyway, they talk a little bit about it, and I'll read it here. Imagine this dystopian future. You enter a bar on a date, spend a little time in awkward conversation, and then, bored, both of you end up staring at the readouts near your corneas, oblivious to each other. The birth rate will fall. There will be anti-glassites who snatch these things from people's faces, and there will be glass-free zones where orgiastic explorations of the human animal will take place with reckless abandon, for you will finally be free. Free, men and women will be reduced to zombies, wandering aimlessly as text scrolls past their eyes like flies on a dead cow's face. Slowly, surely, our major cities will descend into lethargy, and a group of Luddites will arise to fill the vacuum. The glassites will be pacified by porn piped right into their heads, while the rest of the world, the dreamers, the drinkers, and the astigmatics will take the reins. One day, a nuclear dirty bomb built using instructions found on the internet by a glassite who was vaguely upset with the score in Angry Birds Glass will destroy most of the Northeast. And glassites will descend into rabid madness as the media hubs of the world grind to a halt. With no more Reddit or BuzzFeed, glassites will wake up from their slumbers, their atrophied bodies limp as old spinach. But by that time it'll be too late. The anti-glassites will rule the world, their Amish-like refusal to take up technology, their only protection against the tyranny of Mother Google. They will rebuild civilization in their own image, which means there will be a lot of board games and barbecues. Or maybe glass will end up like the Segway. Kind of cool, but vaguely useless. Who knows? What am I, a mind reader? And that was a cute little write-up by John Biggs on TechCrunch. And do I think it's going to turn into like that kind of situation? No. Are there a lot of people who do think that it'll turn up to that situation where people will just be like mindless zombies? No, I don't think so. I mean, in fact, if people are mindless zombies, they, just like constantly taking in, pointless information or something, we're already there. I mean, that's just it. How many people complain about like that they just stare at their Facebook newsfeed all the time, and they just get caught up and they don't even really do anything. And next thing they know, 2 or 3 hours have passed and, oh, wow, where did the time go? Haven't even done anything. I've just been on Facebook all day. I'm not knocking Facebook. I use it too. I like Facebook. I think Facebook is very entertaining. Amazingly, there's people that take it very seriously, but I find it very entertaining. Anyway, so this is what we have with Google Glass. These are kind of these are the bad sides of it. And if you're curious about a little bit more, you don't know about Google Glass, so this thing beams an image directly onto my eye. It's essentially beaming Android, like an Android interface. If you look at your Android phone, it's going to kind of be something to that effect. A guy like Robert Scoble, who hopefully will be on a future episode of the show, he's actually been testing it, and he says it's amazing how well that works, because it's like just out of your peripheral vision, so you're still seeing okay. All right, so that's a fact. And it works by voice commands, like you say okay glass, and then what you're wearing over your over your eyes, well, not really over your eyes but above your eyes, will suddenly respond. And, you know, it has like record video, take a picture, use Google Now, which Google Now is great. Google Now is like their assistant kind of thing that doesn't talk like Siri does for Apple, but you know, it can answer your questions essentially. Search, give directions, send message, display weather, give flight details. And one of the big things that they've said for Google Glass where it would be really popular is that it will have like all the sensors that exist in a modern cell phone or modern smartphone. So it'll have a barometer in it. And so if you're skiing, you can kind of see, you know, where you are. It'll have latitude and longitude, all this stuff built in. And, you know, that's all great. That really is. And in fact, you know, but here's the one that does kind of bother me. One of the features and one of the selling points that people have been making is that you can watch TV all day now. Awkward silence. Yeah. No thanks. Okay. I mean, for me, from age like 5 to age 16, 17, I've seen more TV than I need to watch for the rest of my life. I mean, it's just madness how much I've watched. And, you know, I don't really watch TV anymore. Save a couple shows. Like I watch Spartacus, which, you know, as far as shows on TV right now is easily the best show on the planet. You know, so I do watch a little bit, but by and large, I really don't bother watching television. I read tons of books. I suppose someone could say that they could use Google Glass for that. You know, look, I can just be reading a book the whole time. In fact, reading a book and driving. Now, here's an efficient way to read a book and drive, right? I know people that do that. I never got into that. I was more into the audiobooks when I would be driving. So, but here it is. You know, that's a cool idea to do with it. As far as my personal opinion with Google Glass is I do compare it to a Segway. I think I don't see, you know, Steve Jobs said, I think it was at D5 or this is like back in 2007. He was actually on stage with Bill Gates. I remember this. And he said, you know, we still drive our cars with a steering wheel, right? You know, why would we not use the mouse? Kind of an odd thing because this is the guy that kind of pioneered touch with with iOS. But I still, you know, the whole voice command thing, maybe that'll pick up. Maybe the next generation will get in on that. I'm not cool with the Retina display. And I just like, I think, you know, touch works, like Windows 8 is a good example of this. Okay. Touch works on a handheld device, as in your hand, you know, or like a tablet, like that's, you know, like only a couple 2 to 3 feet away from you. But on a device, touch doesn't work, you know, on a device that's many feet away and is, you know, say 27 inches big, like a desktop computer or something like that. No, you still want a mouse for that sort of thing. And so what you create is you create an environment with Windows 8, you create an environment that's like not designed very well to do everything. It's designed for touch. And when you don't use touch, you know, it just kind of gets in the way and creates frustration. And I get the feeling that using Google Glass is going to create some frustration, especially because, you know, here's the question. Like, okay, people are like in that little editorial, they were saying how people are just going to be watching porn all the time. So how's this going to work? Okay, Glass, Pornhub.com, Gianna Michaels, gangbang. No one's going to do that. And in fact, another thing too, this is an interesting side note, you know, romance novels, and I think this is great. Romance novels, their sales in the past 7 years have quadrupled. Why? You know, I mean, and I think the common cultural trope is that, well, all women read romance novels. So what, are there more women in the world that sales would quadruple? Or are there more romance novels being published? Neither of those are true. What it is that because of Kindles, because no one can see the cover of the book, more men are buying romance novels. Okay? People enjoy the privacy that a smartphone provides. They enjoy, why are tablets so popular? Because it provides a privacy that you can't get with a computer. It provides a privacy that you can't normally carry with you. And Google Glass is going to eliminate that whole privacy. You know what I mean? It's going to bring all that shame and all that, quote unquote shame that people were, and I say shame meaning that like guys apparently before were afraid of other guys seeing them reading a romance novel. Okay. But all that would be out in the open, or you'd have to come up with a complex series of like private commands that do one thing. When you say one thing, it does another. So I see this as a real flaw. They're missing what people like about their smartphones. And one of the things I like about smartphones is the privacy of them. You know what I mean? I'd never look at another person's phone, no matter how much I trusted them or whatever. You know what I mean? No matter what the relationship, I would never look at it without their permission. I mean, that's such a personal device. And that's great. I think that's awesome, that people can have this little world of privacy. Oh, but Big Brother's looking at us. Yeah, whatever. Let them see it. Let them see what kind of, a quote unquote, by social conservative standards, a sick freak you are. Just let it show. Okay. And then when they reveal, oh, look, all Americans look at porn and all Americans do this, good. Then we can get out of this social stigma that somehow sex is bad. Anyway, a little off track there. But Google Glass, yeah, for so many reasons, I just don't see this taking off. The legislation is a joke that we talked about. But they're going to push this, and maybe it'll get some use. I could see some interesting use for like, in particular, Google has a game called Ingress. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Google has a game called Ingress that runs off of like GPS. And it's actually a big scheme to make Google Maps better. But anyway, and I could see where Google Glass would be awesome for that. So it's a product that's going to have its purposes. But as far as something that's going to replace a smartphone, which is what I think Sergey Brin wants to do, that's not going to happen. And it's not, and I don't think it's going to replace computers either, at least not yet. Until these things are literally linking with our brains instead of, still responding to voice commands or even eye movements or something. I can't picture it taking off and, being like this, this next evolution in technology that everybody's claiming that it's going to be. But, now, is this bad for Google? Not really, because you see, in my opinion, real quick, you have two versions of Google. Google's kind of split in two right now. You have the Sergey Brin camp, which is like Google Glass, and then you have the Larry Page. And Larry Page is concentrating on Chrome OS and Android, and that's just going to keep rising, as far as use, and it's proving it all around the world as to where Sergey gets to experiment with the fun stuff, and that's fine. Great company model, in my opinion. I'll be back with more.
You're listening to Sovryn Tech with me, Brian Sovryn, the man who always wears triple black. Sovryn Tech is a show about science and technology and how it can set you free. Remember, Sovryn Tech only endorses businesses and products that we genuinely believe in and support ourselves. If you have a product or website that you would like to have reviewed, you can email the show at sovryntech@hush.ai. Please keep in mind that the reviews on Sovryn Tech pull no punches. Thanks for listening.
Tech Roulette. Want to play?
It is time for Tech Roulette, and I always want to play. And this week, we've got again, the first couple segments here, we're talking about, maybe more, we're talking about like what are the tech trends, what's the future technologies that are going to supposedly change things or whichever. Last segment we talked about Google Glass, and that they're already starting to want to pass legislation against it. Even though again I don't think it's a product that's really going to take off. The next one, this is an article from, we got this from a listener, of course, because it's Tech Roulette, where I read the articles that you send to me. I do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and I pick one, and every week, we do one, and there we go. And this one was sent from a listener, and this is from Datamotion, and this is actually an article by Mike Elgin, who is a friend of the show, and he was on recently. Phenomenal tech journalist, an absolute giant. And he's big. He self-describes, as like a journalist that that talks about the culture of technology. And I think he's right on, and I always find his stuff very interesting. So I was more than happy to get this article and to read it. And it's 5 tech trends that will bring back the wristwatch. Right, like, Rolex. Well, maybe you don't have a Rolex, but you know what I mean. Okay. People don't wear wristwatches like they used to, and the reason is clear. Since everybody's got a mobile phone and the phone tells the time, a watch is unnecessary. I still wear a watch. I actually have a calculator watch that I wear more as a status symbol. You know what I mean? Around here and there. But anyway. But the mobile phone has always been an insatiably greedy platform. It needs more features, more power, more convenience, and above all, more pixels. Get used to the idea of the big platform companies selling or supporting wristwatches that serve as additional screens for and controllers of the phones in our pockets. I believe that Apple and Google will do so, and a large number of small companies, including Pebble, which shipped its long-awaited smartwatch today. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Pebble is a great example of the coming wristwatch revolution. It connects via Bluetooth to either an iPhone or an Android phone. You install apps on the watch through your phone. It has a high-contrast, sunlight-readable e-ink display. E-ink is the same thing that like the Kindle Paperwhite uses, not the Kindle Fire, but the normal Kindle. That's the kind of display it uses. Pebble is cool, but it's just the beginning. 5 strong trends are all converging to make smartphone wristwatches a near certainty. Here are those trends, and there's 5 of them. The multi-screen functionality trend. That's number 1. Until very recently, every device we used had its own screen, and the screen on one device wasn't connected to apps displayed on another screen for the most part. But now, thanks to Apple's AirPlay, mirroring, Microsoft's Smart Glass, Nintendo Wii U, and other products, people will get increasingly familiar with the idea that 2 devices work together as one. With these living room technologies, quote unquote, your smartphone can be a controller or provide additional contextual information for whatever's happening on your TV. This is how the new wristwatches will work. Your watch will show your incoming text, emails, and caller ID information, as well as other data fed by apps running on the phone. You'll be able to control what happens to some degree on the phone by interfacing with the watch. Now, let's just talk about that one for a second. That's probably that. If any use is going to come from it, that may be so, because every phone now, it seems, except for Apple, who's quite a bit behind the times, everything just gets these much bigger and bigger screens. Cell phones used to only have like 3.5-inch screens, and now you have like the Galaxy Note from Samsung that has almost a 6-inch screen. And in fact, they're even talking about with the Galaxy Note 3 coming out probably in October of 2013, this thing might have like a 6.8-inch screen. That'll almost be a tablet, but it's a phone, and they call them phablets and whatever. And all these other companies are coming out with 5-inch screens, 5.5-inch screens, and whatever. And so it's going to get to the point where maybe they'll be a little bit unwieldy on the fly. And so to have a watch that can just see what's going on, so you don't have to keep pulling out that hulk of a phone, will probably be a pretty cool thing. Myself, I love the larger phones. I mean, if they get to tablet sizes, even that's fine with me. I think that's great. I love the gigantic screens. And all the computing power that like the Galaxy Note 3 is supposed to have like an octo core. That's 8 cores inside of it, and I think that's so awesome. That'll be almost as powerful as my laptop. So I think that's probably a pretty viable look into how these things work. Anyway, let's go to number 2, the wearable computing trend. Nerdy geeks like me, and possibly you, are looking forward to becoming cyborgs when we wear Google's Glass gadget. Google's Project Glass involves the development of eyewear that beams visual information into one eye. It has a camera and other sensors, and it enables the wearer to get contextual information, communicate, and take pictures and videos without the fondling of a phone. Google Glass hardware is interesting, but the secret sauce of Google Glass would work equally well on a wristwatch: voice commands, augmented reality information, and so on. It's very unlikely that Google Glass will ever become a widespread mainstream device, and for several reasons. First, it's got a camera on it. Humans don't like cameras being pointed at them all the time. Very true. If you don't believe me, go ahead and point your smartphone or digital camera at someone the entire time you're speaking to them. Second, single-eye display technology bothers some people like 3D does. Third, eyewear is fashion, and people aren't going to turn to Google for fashion. And I got to say that was the number one thing about Google Glass for me months ago when they first started demoing it, was that it is ugly as hell. It doesn't look good. You can put it on the most beautiful woman, or the buffest guy, whatever, I mean, pick your stereotype. And believe me, it just doesn't look good. Looks okay in the sunglass form, but as far as just without the sunglasses, looks terrible. A horrendous fashion statement. Anyway, I agree with Mike Elgin's, all of his assessments on Google Glass as to why it won't be a big deal. But anyway, eyewear-based wearable computing will be huge, but among geeks and specific professionals. The general public, including white-collar workers, will never go for it en masse, but they will wear wristwatches. Number 3, the voice interaction trend. Apple's Siri, Google's voice search, Nuance Dragon Naturally Speaking, and other products are training the human race to interface with computers and phones by talking, just like on Star Trek. Products like Wolfram Alpha, Google Knowledge Graph, and to a certain extent Facebook's Graph Search are moving us toward a world in which queries are answered not with possible options, but with specific answers. Ask a question, get an answer. When you tell Siri to schedule your lunch meeting, or when you ask Google Voice Search who's playing in the Super Bowl, you don't need to type and you don't need to read. You talk, then listen. And if you can do that with a phone, you can do it through your wristwatch without taking your phone out. Tap the watch, talk, and hear the reply. And that's something like Siri and Google Now, or like he was talking about Google Voice Search, and even Dragon Naturally Speaking. And in fact, Dragon has a free app for Android that works like Siri to some degree, and it didn't work half bad. Like, I was sending text while driving and everything, and it always answered my stuff. The problem is, if you're playing music, obviously voice recognition becomes a problem. And so if you're a big music fan, this whole voice stuff doesn't work that well anyway. So it doesn't do a whole lot for me, but it works. It's cool. But I can definitely see where smartwatches would, where that Google Now and Siri could really take off for them. Let's see. We have number 4, the flexible e-paper trend. It's true that smartwatches have been around for years, but they tend to be gigantic and suffer from limited battery life. Recent advances in flexible e-ink will enable much thinner smartwatches that use less battery power. One recent project on Kickstarter is called the CST-01. It's not a smartphone-connected smartwatch, but it's interesting for other reasons. The CST-01 will be the thinnest wristwatch in the world, according to its developers. It uses a similar screen technology as Amazon's lower-end Kindle ebook readers. Because the screen is e-ink, it's super readable in direct sunlight, and it's also flexible, enabling the display to wrap around the wrist. The developers claim the watch will function for a month between recharging, even though it's got a much bigger screen than most smartwatches are likely to have. Flexible e-ink technology will enable even the most full-featured smartwatches to be thin and light. So it's practical. That's the point of number 4, is that, yeah, it is practical to do this, because if we can get a month-long battery life and things like that, that puts it into usability game. Okay, number 5, the Bluetooth 4.0 era. The newish Bluetooth 4.0 radically decreases the amount of power a connected device needs. A special low power mode completely changes how something like a smartphone connected wristwatch can function. Unlike past wristwatches, which both consumed massive power and also needed to be turned on in order to interoperate, a new generation of Bluetooth 4.0 controlled watches can go into super low power mode for weeks if necessary, then wake up to display information coming from the phone. The combination of low power e-ink screens and the low power mode of Bluetooth 4.0, and the fact that all the heavy processing is happening either on the smartphone or the remote servers that the smartphone is connected to, means that connected wristwatches can work for much longer between charges. Make no mistake about it, smartphone connected wristwatches are going mainstream and will be supported by mainstream companies like Apple and Google. If you ask me, I'd say it's about time. Okay, all great points. All absolutely solid great points. And the Bluetooth 4.0, that's kind of the big deal. Like, if you notice, most people that are pretty savvy with their phones or even their laptops will instantly turn off. Why is there a Bluetooth turn off feature? Now, a few reasons. One is that the Bluetooth turn off feature is a security thing, because you don't want people like accessing your phone, like recognizing your phone through Bluetooth and then, say, communicating perhaps a malicious device they have with yours and then, bricking your phone or something like that. But the main reason that they offer you to turn off Bluetooth, I think, is because it just kills the battery. Okay. from Bluetooth 1.0 to 3.0, it's been a mess. It drains, whether be it laptop or smartphone, it drains the battery. So with Bluetooth 4.0, supposedly they've gotten it to the point where, it doesn't, suck so much power. And that's great. Good. So, technology advances, and, now it makes these wristwatches like a little more practical. I do still have to, I mentioned earlier how because phones keep getting larger, that maybe, maybe these wristwatches will make up for that, that interconnectability. I think Mike Elgin's right. It'll definitely be more mainstream than Google Glass will be, these smartwatches, but I don't see them. I still don't really see these taking off. They'll take off more than Google Glass, but I don't see them becoming like that prevalent. And when you think, there's a lot of people, and we're actually going to talk about a Kindle Paperwhite later, but there's a lot of people that like to boast like about the Kindle Paperwhite, how the battery lasts for months. It just keeps going. And like, there's even a meme that goes around that when a Kindle's at like 9% battery life, oh, well, at least I can read for another month. There's lots of people that want that, they want that long battery life, or the fact that, a normal phone, not a smartphone, but a normal phone, the batteries can last forever. I mean, some of them are even like you have the GeForce Casios. They have, like solar on them. And then I mean, like watches have gotten to such a great technological point anyway, and I still think they're useful. Like I said, I still wear one. I mean, there you have like Citizen sells a watch that has what's called Eco Drive on it, where pretty much the whole watch is just a solar collector. And again, battery goes forever. In fact, it even conserves its own power. This is totally mechanical. It conserves its own power, and it'll stop ticking. And until you pick it up and it kind of like feels the heat of your hand or whatever, then the Citizen watch with Eco Drive will suddenly reset itself. It'll know what time it is, and it'll reset itself, and it's amazing. So I don't really see wristwatches coming back into fashion again. Not with the masses anyway. I mean, some people, will still wear watches. They often wear them as, as personal statements, or, like even showing off some wealth or things like that. But that in itself is like kind of niche now. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know, but this is the point. I wanted to talk about kind of like the technologies that are coming. If you want to talk about like with the watches, are there any privacy concerns? Like we talked about some of the ones with Google Glass, just some of the basic ones. Like with Google Glass, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that just instantly say, and Mike Elgin talked about this, how with Google Glass, like you just always have a camera on. And I could see where people who are trying to say go for like government accountability and things like that, they'd love to have, or like when they're dealing with the police, they would love to have, Google Glass on so that, they can just record the whole thing all the time. And that may run into some interesting legislation with that. Forget about wearing it while driving. How is it going to deal with, just your regular interactions every day? There's that. So there's a privacy concern that, well, Google's watching everything that's going on. Oh my God, we're all going to die. And, which is, I think is kind of crazy. But with the wristwatches, as far as any like privacy concerns, I can't really think of any where that would be a problem, because it's really just going to act as a display as far as I can tell. I mean, they may make it to where, you can kind of talk into it like Michael Knight did with Kit, back in the 80s on Knight Rider, where he would talk into his watch, or maybe they do kind of a Dick Tracy thing, where the watch can, you can talk into it and listen from it. I mean, or, maybe even you'll hook up now, I mean, this is kind of old technology. They probably still sell them. There's wristwatches that have MP3 players built into them. So you can put, headphones into it and listen from there. Maybe that'll become a little more prevalent, especially with Bluetooth 4.0, to where you could wear, maybe instead of having a wire running up from your watch, you could have Bluetooth headphones that could receive from the watch. People do this now with their smartphones. Maybe the watch would just make that a little more convenient because you won't have to strap on the phone to your bicep or wherever you put it. And instead you could just have the watch. Maybe the watch could just access, this could be cool. Actually, this is something that I wouldn't mind. If the watch could somehow access Google Music, Google Play Music, where I keep all my music, 20,000 songs. Great service, by the way, totally for free. And if it could access that and then transmit it through Bluetooth, that would be awesome. So Mike Elgin's point number 5 about Bluetooth 4.0 may be the real cincher here, is that you'll have something really wearable that can do all this accessing. And it's easy enough, to flip through playlists. And if it accepts voice commands for what you're listening to music and you're driving down the road, that could be pretty practical. So again, both products, I still feel that both the Pebble wristwatch, which actually got really good reviews. We didn't get into the reviews of the Pebble wristwatch, but I'll post a review from Engadget into the show notes, and you can see the show notes. You can go to soundcloud.com/Sovryn Tech. You can go to sovryntech.com and check it out, and see what that's all about. Or you can go to the Google Plus page, which leads you to YouTube, which has the episodes come out a day early on Thursday instead of Friday when they go on the feeds. You can look at the show notes and you can check out the review of the Pebble and see if that's something that works for you. Maybe it is. But I still, Mike Elgin seems to think that this will take off, that watches will definitely be a really, really big deal. But, I am skeptical. I totally trust his opinions, but I am skeptical on that either of these are really going to take off, because I don't know what need they're providing. We kind of described in the first segment of the show the needs that smartphones, the privacy needs, not the privacy as in, they know everything about me, whoever this ethereal they is, but the privacy between, one-on-one, the privacy from the person next to you sitting on the bus, the privacy, of hearing what you want to hear, all different kinds of information, that you want it, like you're listening to podcasts, like you're listening to me or something. All this sort of stuff. Smartphones fill those needs, whether people are conscious of them or not. Neither of these two devices, wristwatches or the Google Glass, I don't see them. Of course, that's the market. The market comes up with things and we don't even know that we needed them sometimes, So I'm open to that. But neither of these really offer anything at face value that just makes me think, oh yeah, I want that. Controlling things in the living room is pretty cool, like the YouTube remote app for Android phones and iOS and all that stuff's great. But anyway, jury's out. We'll see what happens, but I just wanted to give you a preview of the future of technology that's coming. This is Brian Sovryn. I'll be right back.
Are you ready?
I've never seen anyone so treated like a god in my life.
Brian Sovryn as guest co-host tomorrow night, and so that should be a good show.
On that note,
we just added Brian Sovryn.
Okay, we haven't.
Oh,
is he good?
He's been in the audience.
He's certainly got opinions on things. Yes.
I'm so close to being like God. No one is above me. Okay, absolutely no one. I don't take orders from anybody, and that's how much closer to God can you get?
Is there anything he doesn't do better than everyone else?
Oh, that's just his way of talking. He's one of the best.
Break it down!
Catch Sovryn Tech, the show about technology and how it can set you free with me, Brian Sovryn. That's SOVRYN at soundcloud.com/Sovryn Tech.
Think you could tell me what to do?
Wow. It's a website of the week.
It is Website of the Week, where I give you the websites. I bring to you websites that I find interesting or that I may find that my listeners would see as useful. In this week, I think it's such a well done thing, and it's so good to take some things out of lawyers' hands sometimes. This week's Website of the Week, is a little depressing. But I think it's important and it's really well done. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't share it. But it's about something I don't like to talk about much on Sovryn Tech, and that's death. But the website is called Get Your Shit Together. And it's, what it does is it helps you gather the most important documents you need before you die. It's not something, you want to think about. In fact, quite frankly, I think pretty much everybody under the age, or I'm hoping that people under the age of like 60, right now, as of 2013, will be pretty close to living forever. Technology will get to the point to where, transhumanism will run into that life extension technology that will allow people to live 150 years. And then within that time frame of life extension, we'll figure out how to just live forever. I totally think that's happening. So this isn't something I really like to talk about, but hey, maybe it's something you want to prepare. Maybe it's something you want to be ready for. That's totally up to you. And it's, just what it says, getyourshittogether.org. That's the website. And you can go there. It explains everything. It goes down the list, has templates in all different formats, PDF, Word files, whatever you need. It has templates for wills, your living will, insurance, money. It's got a lot of good stuff. It explains, what to do. They offer some really great services, to talk to you about it and to explain everything. It's in beta right now, but I think it's a pretty cool service. It's kind of like there's a service that's been around for a while called LegalZoom, where it's not lawyers, but it's legal stuff, that you can try and do yourself. And I always think that's great. Any way to empower yourself, especially against the state or in dealing with the state, with governments, is always a great thing. So getyourshittogether.org. The name's funny, right? But I think it gets the point across. But it's not just for death. There's some planning in life involved here too. And it's all very, very simple. I looked at it. I do personally go through lawyers, but that's just me. I can say it is an expensive thing to do. Getting even something you think is like, well, do we just draw up a will? We'd write up a piece of paper or something. Not that easy, or at least normally it's not that easy. It's not just that when you go through lawyers, and it's equally, I can say, it's not that cheap. So, if you can use this site, getyourshittogether.org, it's spelled exactly how it sounds. There's no exclamation points or anything like that, that comprise the word shit. They just said shit, and which is great. So go there. You can look at the free templates, and they offer so much more. I really thought it was a great resource. And again, anything you can do, any kind of independence you can gain, and any power you can have, in dealing with anything in the legal system, because our modern legal system is such a mess and a joke. Use it. And getyourshittogether.org is definitely one of those places where you can make use. So, anyway, we will now return to the regular scheduled programming of talking about life and how fucking awesome it is. This is Brian Sovryn. You're listening to Sovryn Tech. I'll be right
back. Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
Jezebel.com recently had an article about how much more it costs to have a vagina than a penis. Well, first of all, there's period gear. An average woman will have about 500 periods in her lifetime, and she'll pay $120 to $160 a year for pads and tampons, not to mention the extra time that's involved. A lot of women will be paying from $120 to $1,000 a year or more for birth control, and add up to $500 a year for gynecological exams and the occasional yeast or urinary tract infection. Occasionally, even the best methods of birth control will fail. This means a woman would have to set aside between $400 and $1,000 if she needs an abortion, and way, way more if she decides to have a child. Pubic hair removal will cost $315 a year if a woman gets waxed only 9 times. Haircuts cost more for women. and most women need way more hair care products than men. If a woman has her nails done, that's an extra $40 every 2 weeks or $1,000 or more a year. Now, makeup is not cheap, and unless a guy is a serious clothes horse, the average woman will pay way more for clothes each year than he will. And he doesn't have to buy bras or pantyhose.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
It is time for listener emails, where you send me an email. You send it to sovereigntech@hush.ai and ask me a question, and I either answer it via email, or if you want it answered on the show, I will answer it on the show. And this week I actually got a pretty basic listener email, but it's an important one. It's simple in its question, but very, very complex in its execution, in my opinion. And this is something I've talked about in other episodes of Sovryn Tech. Again, you can go to soundcloud.com/Sovryn Tech, and you can listen to all the episodes there. They're up there. You can, it's all unlimited. It's spared no expense. It's amazing. SoundCloud is really, really a great service, and it's all there for you. And you can comment right in. In fact, you know what's really cool about SoundCloud? Just real quick, I love this. When you're listening, if you listen to the show on SoundCloud, now you can download it, or right from SoundCloud, or you can download it on your favorite podcatching program, whatever, or through iTunes. But if you listen to it on SoundCloud, if there's certain points on it, like where I make a statement that, whatever, gets some kind of reaction out of you, or you have a comment about it, you can actually comment on the exact moment that I say it. And you can leave the comment on SoundCloud, and I can reply to you on SoundCloud, or I can use it for listener email if that's what you like, and let me know. And if you want to be mentioned by name, tell me you want to be mentioned by name. Otherwise, I'll leave you completely anonymous. So anyway, this listener email is, again, really simple question. What is the best OS to use? Like, you want to ask the question for what, but that's all there is. Like, what's the best OS to use? And it's not a question that has like a really basic answer. And again, this is a question we've kind of touched on before in episodes of Sovryn Tech. But I'll try and, make it as definitive as I can now. And it does in some way depend on what you want to do. If you want extreme ease of use and, the most compatibility and ability, as in, now what do I mean by that? It works with the most programs. It's the most supported, and there's not a whole lot of command line work meaning you have to, like, if you can picture the old, movies in computers where they had, the green screens, green and black lettering, you know what I mean? And everything was being typed out. All the commands had to be typed out. There was no GUI, which is graphic user interface. Okay. That wasn't there. So if you want the absolute ease of use, compatibility with most software and most devices and blah, blah, and all that, get an Apple. Okay. Now, when you buy an Apple, you're not just buying an operating system. You're buying an ecosystem. You're buying hardware. You're buying, all this stuff. And let me tell you, that ecosystem, all that hardware with the software works so well. It works so exceptionally well. There's a reason they can charge premium prices for it and get away with it, because it's worth it. That's just how it is with Apple. It's an amazing company. Some may say that it's gone downhill since Steve Jobs died, sadly. But it's still an amazing company, still has a great infrastructure. And if you want ease of use combined with the fact that it works with like everything, like you can plug in any device you've got and it's going to work with it. You can use any different kind of file and it's going to read it pretty well. Definitely OS X, which is Apple's main operating system, that's the way to go. Also, and just an interesting side note, I think Apple, they just recently, in the past couple months of 2013, they they updated their iPad. They didn't come out with a new, like I think they're on iPad 4 or 5 now. They didn't come out with like an iPad 6, or they didn't put in a new processor. What they did was they actually released a new iPad that has 128 gigabyte hard drive space. Normally the maximum was you could buy it in 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, or 64 gigabyte. And they now have 128 gigabyte. The reason for that is that I think, and this is important to the question, okay, because if OS X is the best as far as ease of use, I think OS X is going to go the way of the dinosaur. What is the purpose to releasing with all these cloud services and everything? Why would you release an iPad with 128 gigabyte hard drive? It doesn't even make sense. In fact, it goes against just about anything that, in particular, Steve Jobs was designing with the iPhone. So why do that? And my opinion, no one's really talking about this, but in my opinion, Apple's just going to get rid of computers, and they're going to have everything be done on iPad. And that's why they're starting to release. They're trying to get some market signals maybe on, okay, if we release an iPad with 128 gigabyte, what's the usage going to be like on that? How many people are going to buy it, etc. So I think that's the future of Apple. So maybe iOS is the best operating system out there as far as ease of use, because Mac OS X might not exist in a couple of years. So something to consider there. The next one you've got to, that you got to talk about is Windows. Okay. Now you have a lot of different versions of Windows, all of which still get used. With OS X, pretty much everybody, usually goes to the next one, like Mountain Lion or Snow Leopard, whatever. But with Windows, some people like really stick with their old Windows. And so there's Windows XP, Windows 7, and Windows 8. Those are the three that, that still have some real prevalence. As far as ease of use, not as easy to use or as intuitive as OS X. The Windows 8 is trying to be that, because Windows 8 is a very unique animal. But while not as easy, it is very much the Swiss Army knife of operating systems. Like Windows 7 in particular can handle any technology that comes its way. It's not encumbered by it needs specific hardware, because like OS X needs to, you can do what's called a Hackintosh, where you can put it on, your own hardware, but even then you still need pretty specific hardware. Windows works on everything, almost any hardware, and sometimes even really antiquated hardware. So it's great for that. It has that ease of use graphic interface, or at least easier. It's not as easy as OS X, okay, but there's just so many programs that exist out there for Windows. It really, the amount of software that exists for Windows is just unmatched, and they're actually pretty good. They have what they call compatibility layers built into Windows to where it can run like much older stuff. So kudos to Windows for that. So if you're looking for really the operating system that is still the most prevalent, like that if you need help with, the average person will most likely be able to help you with, that would be Windows. And I'd recommend Windows 7. Windows 8 needs to get some bugs worked out. Microsoft in the next month or so should be announcing something called Windows 8 Blue or Windows Blue, where they're going to, look, I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to update, because Windows 8 has kind of an identity problem. And the identity problem is that it's designed for touch, but then it also has the desktop environment for people that do work, for people that like run Photoshop or do video editing or whatever. And the two don't work well together. It's a minor annoyance, but it's there, especially when you're trying to be really, really efficient, which a lot of power users on computers want to be efficient. The efficiency is not there. So some people speculate that Windows 8 Blue is going to possibly, for the desktop, eliminate the touch interface, or at least make it more secondary. But nobody really knows what they're planning on. And kudos to Microsoft for keeping things secret. So Windows is great. Now, here's where Windows really shines. If you want to play video games, that's the one. That's it. The argument's over. Okay? If you want to play video games, Windows, be it 7 or 8, is the operating system for you. That's just unquestionable. It's insane the amount of games you can play on that. Absolutely insane. You can play plenty of games on OS X. You can still play Duke Nukem Forever on OS X, and you should. You can still, and like with the next operating system we're about to talk about, Linux, Steam, which is the Steam by a company called Valve, which is the software suite for video games in PCs today. They're on Mac and they're on PC, is now pushing Linux, and it's pushing Linux hard because they're coming out with their own hardware. So, games are going in Linux's direction, but right now it does not compare, and probably forever, because everything would have to, all these games that have been released for Windows since, the late 1980s, you'd have to port all of them to Linux. Which can be done. It can be done now, actually, with emulators. But, that's just a whole other topic. So if you want to play games, that just the conversation's over. Windows 7. Now, if you're just a power user, you like to work, you want security, as in some degree of privacy, or you want everything encrypted, all that can be done on Macs, and it can be done on Windows as well. Maybe not Windows so much, but it can definitely be done on Macs. But if you want to really, really take control of your computer, you got to go with Linux. Okay. Now, Linux has a learning curve, no doubt about it. But once the beauty of it is that when you learn it, you have control of your computer. Okay. Now, the world's changing. So many things, there's a very popular distribution called Ubuntu. Okay. And everybody's just releasing their programs to work very, very well with Ubuntu, to be installed very, very easily, almost to the point of a Windows experience. It's that close. And that's great. The nice thing, so what's the advantages to Linux as compared to Apple and Windows? Linux is totally free. Doesn't cost a thing. You can download it and you can install it, and it's yours. As to where, with Microsoft, it's right in the user, in the EULA, in the end user license, it says you are licensed to use Windows. You do not own Windows. As to where with Linux, it's all you. Go for it. You do whatever you want with it. Totally open source. Open source meaning that you can look at the code at the bare bolts, and you can make changes to it if you want to for yourself. If you make changes to your Linux, it's just going to affect your Linux. It's not going to affect anyone else's. And a lot of, there's so many different Linux distributions out there, or as they call distros, which is different versions of the operating system. There's so many that it can be confusing. All right, which one do I use? Everybody uses Ubuntu, but here's the problem with Ubuntu. Okay. Is that they've started putting in ads into Ubuntu, and Ubuntu, the way its interface is set up, I feel like it's designed to do only one thing at a time. You can't multitask on Ubuntu, and I don't think it's meant to. It's meant, and they're designing it to be very, very easy to use. And in fact, as far as ease of use, not overall compatibility like Apple has, but as far as ease of use, it may even beat Apple as far as Ubuntu goes. But the ease of use comes at a cost. You're only doing one thing at a time. So my recommendation, what's the best OS for me? If you want my opinion, what do I want to use? What do I use? Actually, what this show is being made on right now is called Lubuntu. It's with an L. It's Ubuntu. Again, it's one of these different distributions. It's still Ubuntu, works with all these wonderful Ubuntu programs that everybody's making, things for Ubuntu. You can run Litecoin, Bitcoin. You can run Audacity. You can't run Photoshop. Just deal with that. You can run all these different things. You can run Google Chrome. I mean, all this stuff. Steam works on Ubuntu. All this stuff works. You get all that, but you get it in an interface that's called LXDE. That's where the L comes from for Lubuntu, which is designed to be fast, streamlined, and multitasking. And I love it. And it works great. And it's really lightweight. And the battery life on the laptop's awesome when it's running. So Lubuntu. I'll link to it in the show notes. That is the king to me right now. This is Brian Sovryn. I'll be back with more.
Hey, look! Got an energy spike.
Launch. In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity. It is our last, best hope for peace. It is Babylon 5.
All fighter squad Get us out of here. Return fire. Well, freeze them. Freeze them.
Watch Babylon 5.
You can watch Babylon 5 and experience the greatest show in television history. See the entire series completely free by going to thewb.com/shows/Babylon 5.
Software of the Week.
It is time for Software of the Week, where I talk about various points of software that I consider very useful. And this one, there's been episodes in the past where I've talked about VPNs, which is virtual private networks, which allows you to kind of anonymize your internet access to some degree, and it encrypts your internet access and things like that. They're really, really great. If you want to learn more about what a VPN is, hit up Wikipedia on that. And we've talked about them before, and I've recommended a few in the past. And I will do with my picks of the week, software of the week, website of the week, pick of the week, whatever. If I find that there's something better than what I recommended before, I'm going to mention it. And this week I'm mentioning probably what I found to be the best VPN service out there. And in fact, there's one reason that it's really, really killer. And it's privateinternetaccess.com. Privateinternetaccess.com. Now, it runs, anywhere from $7 monthly, up to where for a year you can pay for $40 for a year. Okay, it's not a free VPN. They don't offer any kind of free VPN, from them either. But I mean, this is really, really great. Now, the cool thing is that this can also work for your phone. A lot of phones, like Android particularly, allows you to, use a VPN to encrypt your Wi-Fi connections and things like that. And that's really cool. Any way you pay for this offers unlimited bandwidth as far as how much you use it. Just a handy thing. And VPNs are so handy, especially when you're going to other countries, because it allows you to access. Often what it does is it can change your IP, and it can allow you to access websites that are often blocked by governments in other countries, which is pretty cool. So a great thing to have, a VPN. Definitely worth the money. This one was also Editor's Choice by PC Magazine, which, that's prestigious for what it is. But here's the real kicker as far as why privateinternetaccess.com. They accept Bitcoins as payment. I mean, that's awesome. I understand Bitcoin as of this recording is at 140 some odd dollars in 2013, so maybe you want to hold on to your Bitcoins, and I can understand that. But it does allow you to pay in Bitcoins, and that's awesome. I mean, how can you beat that? And I firmly support, I love entrepreneurship, and I firmly support companies. I'll buy from a company a lot of times just because they take Bitcoin. Because I want that to be recognized that, yes, this is what I as a consumer want. I want you to take the currency of my choice. That's very, very important. And so, who else would I go with? I mean, in that case, VPNs are something that I think are very important and very useful. In fact, honestly, even for my phone more than for my computer. But all the same, privateinternetaccess.com, and they take Bitcoin. I mean, how much better you can get? I mean, you can buy it with FRNs. You can get it with PayPal, I think, even. So you have your options. But that's the beauty, is that you have the options, and it works really great. I can honestly say privateinternetaccess.com does work really, really well. It anonymizes everything. Their customer service is good. I actually called and I talked to a human being at one point. It was awesome. So they protect your identity. They keep things from, it works almost like a firewall to some degree even. It's just an awesome service. Privateinternetaccess.com, and you can get it with Bitcoins. Doesn't get any better than that. It's Brian Sovryn, and I'll be back with more.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out.
LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Brian! Stop playing those video games!
Just a minute, Mom.
Game Talk.
It is time for Game Talk, perhaps my favorite part of the show. I want to mention again quickly, I really think this is awesome. For Android, Namco has released totally free, other than you have to buy tokens to take part in the tournaments. But you can get the original PAC-MAN for your smartphone, for your Android smartphone. And it's PAC-MAN plus tournaments, which allows for a leaderboard, and you can play online, and whoever scores the highest you actually get physical. You win physical things out of this. You don't just win something in the game, some kind of treasure in the game. You actually can win, I think right now they're offering plushy ghosts, a set of plush ghosts, which is really cool. I actually have a plush PAC-MAN, which is nice, but not that I won it through the game. But anyway, but there's actual prizes involved. So definitely worth checking out PAC-MAN plus tournaments. If you have an Android tablet or smartphone, give it a look. The controls I thought are very, very well done. Or at least as well done as they can be on touch. Of course, it can accept other controllers, like the Moga controller, or something from SteelSeries. They offer an Android controller that works really, really well, and you can use that. So, but I just want to get that out there because I think it's so great. It's free. Why not play it? It's awesome. But what I'm really going to talk about for Game Talk this week is something that, as far as actual game talk around the world, has been talked about for probably 30 years. And that's virtual reality. And this article, it's a little bit of an older one. It's back from January, but it's from PC Gamer. And it's an interview with Valve, which is the company that makes Steam that we were talking about a little bit earlier in the show. Virtual reality hardware needs a Kobayashi Maru moment. What is Kobayashi Maru? Now, Kobayashi Maru is actually a Kobayashi Maru moment. The Kobayashi Maru is a reference to Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 11. You take your pick which one you want to go with. And the Kobayashi Maru was a ship. Captain Kirk is in Captain Kirk's not in it, but he was before. Anyway, there's a simulator called the Kobayashi Maru where it's the no-win scenario. And it's what does a captain do when you can't win, when the odds are just too great against you and you can't win. And so that's what they mean by Kobayashi Maru. It's the no-win scenario. Or it's the moment where, let's read the article. Ladies and gentlemen of PC gaming, we've officially come full circle. A gaming studio used a Star Trek reference while discussing the future of virtual reality on the internet. In a lengthy dissertation posted last week on the Valve Time blog, programmer Michael Abrish stated, display latency represents the primary bottleneck for VR hardware, including Valve's secretive wearable computing project, needs to address when compared to the eye's behavior in the real world. The post also apparently proves Valve's slow transformation into a real-life Aperture Laboratories. So, okay, there's a lot of inside comments in there. Okay, a lot of innuendo. And Aperture Laboratories is the name. Valve makes a game called Portal 1 and Portal 2, very, very popular games. And the joke is that's Aperture Laboratories is to some degree the antagonist in the games. And it comes up with all these experimental technologies and everything. It's not directly the antagonist, but it's kind of the place for it. And so that's what they're saying, is that Valve is coming up with all these wild technologies, like a secretive wearable computing project. And now virtual reality, which they're saying is just, it's not happening. because of latency. Latency is the time frame of communication, as in the time it takes for a computer or a headset in this case, which would be virtual reality, wearing a headset over your eyes so that you think you're in a virtual world, responding to your eye movement. So that's where they're saying the problem is that the computer can't respond fast enough to your eye movement. Okay, we'll continue with the story. On the basic level, VR latency measures the time elapsed between moving your head and how fast the projected image gets redrawn with all objects in their correct positions relative to your viewing angle. Abrish claims modern hardware accomplishes this at a 26 millisecond latency, a blazingly fast dot of time in general, but too slow for the purposes of VR. 26 milliseconds, wow. If too much time passes, the virtual image will drift far enough so that it has clearly wobbled in virtual reality, or so that it is obviously no longer aligned with the same real-world features. In augmented reality, virtual reality is you're like literally, you look like you're in another world, as to where augmented reality is you're like, say you're looking through, you're looking at your smartphone and the camera, the camera's on, and so you're looking at what's in front of you through the camera of the phone. And augmented reality is that the camera actually shows you something that's really not there, but you're still looking at, say, a building that is there. You get me? Okay. Abrash wrote, for reference, games generally have latency from mouse movement to screen update of 50 milliseconds or higher, sometimes much higher. VR is so much more latency sensitive than normal games because they're expected to stay stable with respect to the real world as you move. While with normal games, your eye and brain know they're looking at a picture. It almost sounds like the first step to breaking out of the Matrix. So he's saying, what Abrash is saying here is that if you had a virtual reality headset on, and you looked to your right, and you not just looked to your right, but like moved and pivoted to your right, what you would see wouldn't match your movement. And so your brain would be like, what the hell's going on here? Okay. Knocking down latency to around 7 milliseconds is the ultimate goal. Again, they're at 26, according to Abrash. Current hardware offerings limit options, however, and Abrash predicted the need for a Kobayashi Maru moment, a Trekified analogy for a sudden eureka realization, to truly propel VR systems to that magical milestone. So they're looking for a miracle. There's got to be that, like, okay, no, we do figure out how to beat. We're in the no-win scenario right now, and yet we figure out how to beat it. Now, the reference, again, with Kobayashi Maru is that when Captain Kirk from Star Trek took the test, he actually cheated, reprogrammed the Kobayashi Maru scenario so that he could win. And so that's why they're saying it needs a Kobayashi Maru moment, because they got to find that moment when they can, where they just go, this is how you beat it. Okay. There's no way to get low enough display latency out of existing hardware that also has high enough resolution, low enough cost, appropriate image size, compact enough form factor, and low enough weight, and suitable pixel quality for consumer scale AR, he wrote, AR being augmented reality. Someone has to step up and change the hardware rules to bring display latency down. It's eminently doable, and it will happen. The question is when and by whom. It's my hope that if the VR market takes off in the wake of the Oculus Rift's launch, the day when display latency comes down will be near at hand. Okay, the Oculus Rift is an actual VR headset. It's a headset that you put on and you play video games. In fact, they re-released Doom 3 last year in 2012, and they called it the BFG edition, and it was designed to work with the Oculus Rift. It was designed to work as a virtual reality game. So this is out there. This isn't, it's theoretical to get it to the point where, where Valve wants it, to where it's like at 7 milliseconds of latency time. But it is out there. People are using it. Augmented reality is very, very popular. It's being done. Nintendo's been doing it for eons. And even more so now with their, like, the Nintendo 3DS has augmented reality. We talked a little bit before about Google, how they have the game Ingress. That runs off of augmented reality where, you're seeing one thing, but your phone sees a whole other thing. But this is coming. This is something they're trying for, and it always looks ridiculous. You can watch movies from the 90s where this is kind of all the rage with wearing, virtual reality headsets, and they all looked really clunky and boxy, had a real fashion problem. And, not that fashion seems to be an issue with companies, because Google Glass is coming out and that's not fashionable at all. So, but this is getting close. The idea, if you've been looking for virtual reality video game playing, we're almost there. And the Oculus Rift has been released, so that's something to look into. Anyway, this is Brian Sovryn, and I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech.
Are you searching for a mouthwatering, all-natural, sweet and sticky treat? What if I told you it was also made by a chef who believes in freedom, just like you? You're not dreaming. This is real. Head over to mandrick.com. That's MANDRIK.com. There, you'll find Georgia's famous baklava in classic and dark chocolate flavors. To those with special health needs, Georgia's famous baklava also has a treat for you. Golden delicious, low-carb, gluten-free almond cookies. Order with PayPal or Bitcoins. In just a few days, your sweet treats will await you right at your doorstep. One more time, that's MANDRIK.com for Georgia's famous baklava. Hacker Stories.
It is time for Hacker Stories, where I talk about hacking in all of its forms. Social engineering, hacking at hardware, which is what we're going to talk about this time. We'll talk about software hacking, black hat, white hat, gray hat, all of them. I love hackers. I think they're the good guys, and they're the people that are really pushing the world forward every day. And not enough people talk about them, especially, they should be talked about in relatively everyday circles. And they're often not. And so I like to bring some light into that. So this week we've got a story from Engadget, and this is pretty fresh. It's from April 2nd, 2013 by Jamie Rigg, and it's Hacker Turns Kindle Paperwhite into Wireless Raspberry Pi Terminal. Now, the link to this will be in the show notes. You can find the show notes, be it if you subscribe to the show's feed, or you can go to soundcloud.com/Sovryn Tech, see them there, or if you listen to the show on YouTube, perhaps to the G Plus page at gplus.to/Sovryn Tech, SOVRYN, remember that. You can find the show notes there, and you can get a look at exactly what this looks like, and it is so cool. Just really, really cool. I love it. So the Raspberry Pi, this is the article, the Raspberry Pi is all about low-cost computing. Okay, if you're not sure what the Raspberry Pi is, we'll talk about it after, because the article itself is just super short, which makes this particular hack quite fitting, as it allows you to make a terminal for your little Linux machine out of something you may already have at home, a Kindle Paperwhite. Displeased with the glare from his laptop screen on a sunny day, Max Ogden was inspired to find something better and ended up with the Paperwhite hack. It builds on the original Kindleberry Pi method for the Kindle keyboard, although Ogden had to message it for the newer model and added some extra hardware to make the setup as wireless as possible. You couldn't call the end result a monitor as such. The Paperwhite logo logs into an SSH session running on the Pi, so it pretty much works for terminals. That's probably the best, as Ogden guesses the lag between wireless keyboard and e-ink screen is around 200 milliseconds. We were just talking about latency. That's pretty slow, but at least it has portability, battery life, and sunlight readability in the pros column. Details of the project can be found at the source below, meaning only time and probably a few peripherals stands between you and the ultimate hipster coffee shop machine. Hilarious. So what was done here? Okay, now if you're not sure what Raspberry Pi is, Raspberry Pi, it's a computer. It's about, the size of it's smaller than the average person's hand, or palm even. It's so small. And they run about $35, believe it or not. Very inexpensive. They run on ARM architecture, which means that the graphic processor and the central processor all run in one. It's just this little circuit board, and I mean, it's really, really an ingenious idea. They can barely keep these on the shelves, obviously at $35 or even $50 for some other models. They just fly off the shelves. Because how could you not want a computer for that much? And they can run Linux. They have an SD card slot on them. They usually have 2 USB ports. I think they updated the RAM. The RAM used to only be either 256 or 512, and they doubled it. But I'd have to look back into that. And it has an HDMI port for a monitor, and it has a jack for sound, and I mean, it's just this great little computer. You got to look into them. They're up to 512 megabytes now. So, it's pure genius. You can run Linux on it. You can load Linux onto an SD card because the thing doesn't have like an actual hard drive. You use the SD card as the hard drive. It's so cool. And there's a lot. You can configure the crap out of this thing. And again, it's so small. Like there's people that configure that like make custom cases for them, and they put them inside of like an Altoids can. That's how small this is. Amazing. Anyway, so you have the Raspberry Pi, which is this, relatively powerful computer in your hand. I mean, it has, it can connect wirelessly to things. I mean, it's got it all. It even has an Ethernet port on it. And, so this guy connects, and you can go to the show notes and you can figure out how to do this, but I just thought it looked so awesome. This guy connected a keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard, much like I use one for my phone that I connect to my phone with. And, you can connect to, you could put in a little Bluetooth dongle into one of the USB ports on the Raspberry Pi computer. And then you could connect, via that. And then the Paperwhite, the Kindle with the e-ink screen, can connect wirelessly as well. And then you just use, for power, you use an external power pack, like a battery pack of some kind, like they sell these where you can, if your phone loses its charge, you can plug it into this little battery pack. Even Energizer offers these things, and you can charge your phone in like a couple hours if you're, on the go and you're not anywhere. Say you're not in a car, say you're on a plane trip or something, you don't have anywhere to plug it in, you can bring one of these external battery packs. And so essentially, it doesn't say what kind of battery life he's getting, but the Raspberry Pi takes insanely little amount of electricity. The Kindle Paperwhite, obviously the battery life on that is months. And now I know at least the Bluetooth keyboard I had, now here he's using an Apple Bluetooth keyboard, but and I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how long those last, but the Bluetooth keyboard I use for my Android phone lasts like 3 months. So you've got some sustainability here with this. Your battery life is probably pretty good. And, you could just keep the computer in a bag if you want or whatever. And I love the e-ink display. I'm a huge fan of that. Actually, this is what turned me on so much about this was that the screen was an e-ink display, and he's like running Linux or whatever, and it just, and it works well with it. The e-ink display is just black and white, of course. Picture the Kindle, not a Kindle Fire, but what a normal Kindle looks like, and that's what you're picturing. And I love that because there's no eye strain with an e-ink display. It doesn't matter day or night, no eye strain. And in fact, he's using a Kindle Paperwhite, which that has the ability to, even in the dark, it collects whatever natural lights, just anything. It collects whatever's around and it'll light itself. So really cool ability there. And is it impractical? Can you just, pull out your phone and connect with the Bluetooth keyboard and whatever and do your business? Of course you can. That's what I do. That's fine. That works great. And there's not a whole lot of hacking done. But if you want a fun little project, and again, I love the display. I think the display is awesome because, again, there's no eye strain, because there's, I think it's been scientifically proven that computer screens, like the blue in them and all that, like the backlit screens, actually keep you from falling asleep. It's not healthy, for essentially the rhythms of your body. There's a whole lot of science behind that. In fact, on my computer, in Linux, and this is available for iOS and Macs and Windows too, I use a program called Flux, F.lux, and that gets rid of the blue in the screen essentially, and it reds everything over so it's a little more like sunlight, or it's a little more natural, more like candlelight at night. So automatically, like, whatever sundown is, be it 6 or 7 o'clock, suddenly the color hues of my monitor change. And that, and that's to help you, help your bodies, naturally fall asleep, as it should. And so anyway, so that's what attracted me to this, this little hack here, was that he was using the Kindle Paperwhite screen. And I love Raspberry Pi too. I mean, come on, a $35 computer. You can't beat that, and so, and I'm guessing all around to use all the hardware that this guy used, he probably hashed out about $250. I gotta admit to that. But boy, does it look cool. It's fun. Check it out in the show notes. You can go to SovrynTech.com to see those. And I'll be right back with more.
This is Stephanie Murphy, Sovryn Tech producer. You may know me from this show, but did you know that I have my own podcast? It's called Pork Therapy. Pork Therapy is a bit different from other shows. We cover current events, big ideas, and even relationship issues, all through the lens of how we can get more freedom in our lives. Oh, and you'll love Sex and Science Hour. Join me on my website, porktherapy.com. That's PORC therapy.com. Now back to Sovryn Tech.
What are you doing? I can't believe I caught you again. Jesus doesn't approve of this little habit of yours.
I know, baby, I know it's wrong, but it feels so right.
Well, it ain't.
But I've been doing it since I was 12 years old.
It's nothing but a sinful perversion of nature, if you ask me.
But baby, I don't ever want to stop looking at tech websites, new gadgets, video games, software, or any of that stuff.
Well, then I'm leaving.
Okay. Bye.
Pick of the week.
It is time for Pick of the Week, where I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about. It could be, software, hardware, music, movies, books, TV shows, comics, political things. Not that I ever care to talk about politics, because politics is an absolute waste of time. But I get to talk about whatever I want, which is great. I enjoy that. And this week, this is kind of multifaceted. A lot of times, I've talked about TV shows in the past. This week is a TV show. But this one there's something very special about it that raises an interesting point, especially in anarchist thought. And this show it's a show I grew up with. And it's about a character that has been, quite frankly, pivotal in my life. Because, all right, let's say this. Maybe some of us had good parents, or we had good childhoods and things like that. My childhood was not the grandest by any means. For most of us, I think, whether we realize it or not, our childhoods pretty much sucked. And I did not look at my parents as heroes, as to where I think that's the common idea that you're supposed to do. Instead, I found heroes in stories. I found heroes in various forms of media. And one of those happened to be Batman. And so this is about the television show Batman. Now, which one? There's been, while there's only been one live action Batman, and that's the one we're talking about, there have been many cartoons, all of which have been very well done and usually, have tons of accolades to go with them. This is the show from the 1960s. It ran from 1966 to 1968, went 3 seasons, 120 episodes. And this is the Adam West classic with Adam West as Batman. You know, he made a lifetime career out of it pretty much. At least not playing Batman over and over again, but just in that, like, everybody knew him for this. And rightfully so. He did a great job. And it's kind of a, you know, as far as Batman goes, everybody that today thinks Batman's, you know, all deadly serious. And generally he is, and I like him that way. But in the 60s, Batman was this, at least with this show, with this TV show, he was very comedic. It's a hilarious show. Nothing is taken very seriously. Batman has a gadget for everything. He even there's a time where in one episode where a criminal, where the Riddler left them a riddle, but he left it in alphabet soup. Okay, which is soup with the letters of the alphabet in it. And he had to like figure out what exactly, you know, what is the riddle that he left. And so they ran the alphabet soup to the Batcave, Batman and Robin did, and they poured it into the Bat Alphabet Soup Collector. Dead serious. And it sorted out, you know, the letters and said, okay, these are the possible messages that it made. But he actually had, and it was labeled the Bat Alphabet Soup Collector. Awesome. Hilarious. I love it. And, you know, this show was so popular that while even then, you know, while the comics weren't as serious as like when Frank Miller finally took over or did his business with Dark Knight Returns in the 80s, while the comics were relatively serious back then, the show was so popular as a comedy that the comic started to become comedic, you know, and like they just started doing these ridiculous stories and all this stuff. So many of the Batman memes and tropes that they have out there are based on this television show. This show was huge. They even made a Wonder Woman show, not as an offshoot so much, but because it was so popular, they were able to make a Wonder Woman show. But the Wonder Woman show was actually very serious. It didn't have the comedy of Batman, where, like, you know, the original Batman series is very well known for the, you know, pep, pow, you know, like, and like this. They tried to make it look like the comic book where, like, when you hit somebody, you know, it like showed the sound in a little bubble and everything. Really, really great stuff. But the show, I mean, it was actually ingeniously written. The acting is top notch from everybody on there. The Joker is hilarious. Amazingly, the Joker is played by a Hispanic gentleman, you know, playing the Joker. Oh, and he was great. And in fact, if you look at it, especially now, if you look at it to some degree of high definition, though there isn't really a high definition version of it, and we'll talk about that in a second, you can actually see, because they painted his face, you know, bright white, and the guy just culturally, you know, he wouldn't shave his mustache, and you can actually see the mustache. If you look close enough, you can see the mustache, and they just painted like white over it. They tried to make it look like it wasn't there, but the guy just wouldn't paint it. It's hilarious. Anyway, so the whole show is great. Very, very funny. You know, could it be described as family fun? Certainly, you know, if you're into that sort of thing. Yeah, just really enjoyable. I mean, and it's Batman, and the Batmobile in it looks awesome. It's an old Ford Futura, which never really got released in America. Though it did in Australia. Just an awesome little show. So what's the big deal? Why am I talking about it here? Because it's not something like that I watch regularly. In fact, I don't think I've watched it in a while. But here's the challenge that I pose to my listeners. Go to the store. Go to Walmart, go to Best Buy, whatever. Go to Amazon. That's fine. You know, do it online. Go to Amazon.com. Go to some retailer and buy it. Buy the entire series, or at least buy season 1. Now, there's a Batman the movie, okay, but I'm not talking about that. There's a pilot movie they made for the series. Really great stuff. You can get your hands on that if you want it. But buy like season 1 or season 2 or season 3. Go ahead. In fact, press pause right now on the podcast and go out and buy it. Okay, now you can press play again. You probably pressed play. And you've come home empty-handed. Or Amazon said, we don't have that. It's because no one has it. The show is from 1966, and you can't even buy it on VHS. You can't get it on DVD. You're not going to get it on Blu-ray. You're not going to go to the Apple store and get it. You can't get it. It's madness. Okay? Absolute madness. Why? I mean, name the show. There's almost no show you can't get on DVD today. Really. I mean, you can Hardcastle, McCormick, it doesn't matter. You can get whatever show you want pretty much on DVD. They've released it, or at least they've released season 1, and if season 1 didn't sell well, they didn't release any of the others. Now, the sales for the movie, Batman the movie that I talked about, you can buy that. Okay, remember, the challenge was to go buy season 1, 2, or 3. You can buy that, and that sold very, very well, so it's not like it didn't sell. In fact, you can even buy documentaries about the show on DVD. There's one called Return to the Batcave. And all this stuff, it's all locked up in copyright. DC Comics is freaking out because they own Batman. But 20th Century Fox made the show. But DC Comics is partnered with Warner Brothers, and 20th Century Fox isn't going to sell it to Warner Brothers. So DC's saying, no, we own Batman, you can't release it. And Fox is saying, well, we own the show and you can't release it. And nobody gives. Nobody's giving way. It's crazy. Okay, this is what patents and copyrights do. I mean, it's just absolute madness. Now, can you get your hands on it? You can still, through some syndication companies, there's still syndication contracts out there to replay the show. Okay, but those syndication contracts were made before home video existed. That's why they're out there. Otherwise, you'd probably never see the show again. So what you can do is, some people, like, they recorded it off of TV Land, and TV Land played the whole series. You can go to the Pirate Bay, go to thepiratebay.se, or you can go to Kickass Torrents. That's at kat.ph. And from there, you can download the television show. All 3 seasons of the movie. You can get the soundtrack, get whatever you want. It's there. Okay? And, this is amazing. No one's making, at least not really, not the person that did this. Nobody's making money off of getting this show out there. But the demand is out there. You'll see the seeds. The seeds are in the thousands of how many people have downloaded this because people want it, because it's a great television show. It's hilarious and it's fun. And it's Batman. Come on. So this is the madness, the absolute madness of the copyright system. That these things happen. I mean, what else can I say about it? But it also shows the genius of the private world, of the world that doesn't look to the government, where they say, well, you won't release it? I will. And I got to say, the quality on some of these is really, really good. I mean, they've done, they did top-notch work. Now, it's not in high definition. This isn't 720p, but it's pretty close. It's about as close as you'll get. And, you could burn it onto a DVD and, and watch it and enjoy it and show it to your kids, or, enjoy it for yourself, as I would, take your pick. But that's the only way you're going to get it. If there weren't torrent sites or Usenet, forget it. You'd be at the mercy of the networks to see this show. Or you'd have to set up a DVD recorder or record it on your own computer or whatever. Go through hours and hours and hours of work, as to where, thankfully, to the division of labor, some people out there said, "Nah, I want this show and I'm going to share it with the world for free." I wish I knew who exactly the original torrenter was. I'd give them money. In fact, I dare say I'd give them probably $1,000. I'd say, thank you. Thank you for, just letting Warner Brothers or letting DC and Fox keep their heads up their ass, while we can just kick back and enjoy a great, great television show. You know what I mean? And so this is where, we talk about hackers. This is kind of a hacking. This is where they're the good guys. And this is where torrents aren't bad, and this is why they freak out, because, these companies are missing out on big money, and it's got to be annoying them to no end that people are just downloading this show for free. You know what I mean? And you'd think one of them would just cave, and just say, all right, look, fine, let's just get it out there. Someone can make money or give us 20% or something. You figured they do some kind of business, but no, they're just so stuck up. It's really pathetic, and it shows how pathetic the whole copyright system is. And you'd think even that the industry would learn from this, and that they'd see, wow, this guy compiled this, did such a great release and such great editing. Maybe we should hire this guy to put together our editions of it. Or, they could come up with, this reminds me, okay, when CDs in the late 90s, when CD copying became a thing, they didn't, the music companies didn't know what to do. People were just making CDs for free. And so the companies came up with an answer, and I thought it was a pretty good one. They started releasing dual disc, where they would release a CD, and then it would come with a DVD with all the music videos from the band on it, or from the album. And I thought that was a great idea. Good. So let's let this competition kind of, not that I'm a big one for competition in the market I am a big one for competition in the market, but let's let this competition do it. I just don't like the word competition. Anyway, you've been listening to Brian Sovryn. I'll see you next week. This is Sovryn Tech.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN Tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.